Generally speaking, the magic swords of myth had three primary powers: durability, lethality, and security. The sword of Charlemagne's chief knight, Roland, was named Durandal. Durandal combined all three attributes of the archetypal magic sword. First, it was indestructible. Second, the sword was extraordinarily lethal. Roland once used it to fend off an army of 100,000 Saracens. In doing so, Roland was able to save the army of Charlemagne from defeat. The sword provided safety for its wielder and for those whom he served. Like Roland and Durandal, the sword of God, when wielded by the hero in battle, was incredibly lethal and promised ultimate security for the Lord's people. King Benjamin wielded the sword of Laban at the head of the Nephite army, both with the strength of his own arm and with the strength of the Lord, symbolized and guaranteed by the sword. The Nephites slew many thousands of the Lamanites. The incident is reminiscent of Moses holding up the rod of Aaron during the battle against the Amalekites. When the rod of God was raised and visible to the armies of the children of Israel, they prevailed. When Moses let it down, Amalek prevailed. There was a direct connection between the success of the Israelite armies and the raising of the rod of God. The connection was not based upon any science we know today. So too with King Benjamin. When he went forward with the sword of Laban raised and visible to the Nephites, they prevailed. Nephi drew upon the sword of Laban's magical power by making many swords after its manner. In so doing, he ensured the survival of the Nephites against the Lamanites. Nephi used the law of similarity, believing that the swords patterned after the sword of Laban would inherit its special qualities. Of course, the terrestrial heroes wielding the sword of God, Benjamin, Nephi, David, and others, did not model themselves after heroes of myth such as Roland or Arthur. They imitated the heavenly hero, Jesus Christ, whose sword was bathed in heaven, ready to be used against the wicked. To be bathed means to be filled or satiated. The Lord's heavenly sword is bathed with the blood of the wicked. The Lord through Isaiah is prophesying of the second coming, but the heavenly sword bathed in blood was present during the time of David, Nephi, and Benjamin. As we have explained previously, the sword consisted of the axis mundi as blade and the crescent as hilt. It was handled by the heaven man, the heavenly hero. The axis mundi was sometimes blood red in appearance and glowed. It was, after all, the pillar of fire. We also know from the cave of Cumorah that the sword of God had another magical property. Like the Liahona, the surface of the blade displayed changeable writing. When Joseph and his companions were first shown the sword, there was no writing upon it. On a subsequent visit, the sword had written words upon it. Magic writing on the swords of heroes is commonplace. Arthur's blade, Excalibur, for example, had words engraved on both sides of its blade. The words were both in the language of the day and in the oldest tongue of all this world. In other words, the command to take the sword, which Arthur did, was written in the first language, the divine language. In another version of the legend, "He who draws me shall be king," was engraved on the pommel or knob of the blade. Roland's sword Durandal also had writing engraved upon it, proclaiming its name and its heroic past. Magical writing on heroic swords, like the Sword of Laban, follow the same planetary archetypes as the writings on the mythic Caduceus and the Rod of Aaron. After all, the sword and the scepter were based upon the same elements of the polar configuration, the axis mundi, crescent, and the planets themselves.